The quickest, the fastest, the best in the world.
Magnus Carlsen.
Dominant, absolutely dominant.
Chess at blazing speeds.
Get popcorn ready.
Moves without thinking.
Oh, Rook A8, Rook A8!
Tactics without blinking.
95 and it's pinned.
95 even better.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, he lost no time!
The Speed Chess Championship is the elite chess event of the year. For 9 years, the world's strongest blitz players have matched wits over 64 squares.
Really nice maneuver from Anish.
This year, the world's best face off.
Rook G6 and Knight G2.
Wesley just won on time.
You're watching the SCC on chess.com, and it starts right now.
Welcome to the Speed Chess Championship, continuing with quarterfinal matchups today as the players are looking to punch their ticket to London, England for the grand finals live in front of an audience. But we have an audience here today to watch an epic matchup that, Danny, I'm excited that you're joining me. My name is Grandmaster Armand Hambleton. Danny, we've done the call before, but the matches are getting bigger and bigger. Welcome.
We're in the quarterfinals, right? And after today, London starts to be set, right? Winning this match means you are booking a ticket, literally, not flying tomorrow. But yeah, no, it's game time. It's go time, as they say. A lot on the line, and love seeing those aerial views of London. We'll be there in February.
Exactly. Live finals is what these 8 players are here for, Danny, right? You talk about the quarterfinals, the pressure just ramps up. There's no double elimination here, right? It's one match, different formats, and you just have to be the better player on that day.
Well, and one thing to remind everybody is that we now have a console.
Are you unsatisfied with your current prompts and output? I'll let you in on a little secret. Head on over to MetaPrompt.
There will be a third, fourth place matchup, which isn't just because we have a live audience and we want to give the fans everything that they paid for. But remember that winning the third, fourth place matchup is a direct ticket to the Esports World Cup coming in the summer of 2026. So there literally is just so much money, so much at stake, not just for the players, for their esports organizations that they've signed. We'll obviously be giving shout outs to Team Liquid today with 2 of those players. So just so much on the line as we move into the quarterfinals.
You said it. Let's have a look at the bracket, Danny, because something really important is that you can see how many players we started with, right? The entire bracket was so filled out with so many strong players. Every round there's a potential upset, but we've whittled it down from the round of 16 down to now the quarterfinals. There are only 8 players remaining. Of course, we have Hikaru and Wesley. They've matched up so many times in the SCC. Hikaru has emerged on top so many times as well. So that matchup upcoming. Ali Reza versus Jan. They both kind of, dominated their earlier matchups. Now they're matching up against one another. Who is bringing the better form? Hans Niemann against Dennis Lasvik is going to be a truly epic matchup. I think one of the sleeper matchups of this quarterfinals. But Danny, Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana, they are matching up today. You mentioned Team Liquid. This is an all Team Liquid matchup.
And it's a battle we've seen so many times between these two guys in just about every format imaginable, right? And no one will ever forget the 2018 World Chess Championship, where they drew every single classical game of chess on their way to a rapid tiebreaker. They've of course played before in the Speed Chess Championship. So Magnus has gotten the better of Fabi in pretty much every match, but Fabi played fantastic in the battle that you and I had the call on just a couple weeks ago, I guess. So we'll see what happens today rolling out. But yeah, these two guys, we've seen them play a lot, and we're going to see another thriller hopefully today.
Yeah, Magnus and Fabi is, a matchup that you can think about, there's a favorite going into this matchup. Magnus is a favorite every matchup that he plays. But, before we jump into those pre-match predictions, who's the favorite and whatnot, we did have a chance to sit down with Magnus and get his thoughts about Fabi as an opponent in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I think I was on my way back from St. Louis when I was following his match with Prague, which was very interesting, very evenly matched. Played Fabi a couple of times before in the SCC and come out ahead, maybe just once, I don't know. Last time I was unbeaten it's going to be tough to do that again. But, I'll try my best to enjoy the event, and hopefully I can get the better of him at some point. He's incredibly strong, but he does have a propensity to tilt a bit when things don't go according to plan for a bit. So maybe that's something I can exploit.
Well, you heard it there, Danny. There's not many players, maybe like on the face of the earth, that can say, "Oh, the last time I played Fabiano Caruana, he didn't win a game." Just let that thought sink in, Danny.
You took the words right out of my mouth, and I was going to even say there aren't many people on the planet who can say that they experience Fabiano Caruana tilting. When he said that word, it's like I think of Fabi as so stoic, as so calm, because that's the Fabi we see most of the time. But if you think about it, yeah, the one player that Fabi has tilted against probably is Magnus Carlsen, and of course he mentioned the SCC matchup. So we'll see what happens today. But that was when he said the word tilt, I was like, really? Oh yeah, actually against you, I guess Fabi can tilt.
Yeah, it's weird to think about that, coming out of Fabi. But, speaking of the 5-time SCC quarterfinalist, Fabi, he's made an appearance in many SCC events. But when we talk about SCC now, Danny, it's kind of that hybrid format with the live finals at the end. So we had a chance to, speak to Fabi and really ask him, are you more comfortable playing at home or in front of a live audience? Let's find out.
I think most of my events are like what I'm used to is playing in front of people. Like the online chess, it actually feels less natural for me because I don't feel as comfortable playing from home. It doesn't really feel like a competitive arena, So I would actually much rather play in front of a live audience than play at home.
Do you expect that answer? I actually hadn't seen that video, so I'm maybe as shocked as you. What are you thinking?
I hadn't seen it either, and I didn't expect that answer, but it kind of makes sense now that I unpack, how he talks about getting ready and in the right state of mind. And I was going to tell Fabi, if he wants, we could just send a live audience to his home in St. Louis. Like, we could probably arrange that if he's into it, or maybe work with the club. So, I'm kind of semi-joking, but semi-not, because we've had players play from different chess clubs. Hikaru played from a huge event I remember many years ago, and there was just a huge live audience there before we were doing live finals. So if Fabi wants, we could probably figure out an audience watching him play.
Yeah, I have to say, I agree with the sentiment in the sense that it heightens everything. This is the quarterfinals. This is a big match no matter where it gets played, but I like that the players are starting to say, chess isn't that silent game that you spectate behind glass. It really is now a show, and we're seeing more and more live audiences for live finals. That's great. So as we head in, Danny, to the match upcoming, finally, let's get into that pre-match prediction. What can we expect from the match ahead when it comes to the prediction model here? We have 77% for Magnus Carlsen, 23% for Fabiano, and it's with a pretty resounding blitz domination, because we're actually seeing the bullet being quite balanced here.
It is interesting to see bullet so balanced. I agree. That's the one, I guess, time control that definitely jumps out. You and I obviously looked at this particular pre-match statistical prediction when we were doing our round 2 kind of preview show a while ago. Interesting to note that Polymarket had Magnus Carlsen as a 54% chance to win the SCC coming in. We'll see how that holds up. But anyway, this is not that big of a surprise to see Magnus at a 77% favorite over Fabi. I actually almost could argue that maybe he could be more given their history, but you and I drew it up, and I want to talk about that because I think the time controls really matter for Fabi. If I was to outline the upset, it would need to be that first time control, that 5-1 score of 5.5, 2.5, that would have to be different. If Fabi would have to take advantage of maybe a slow starting Magnus Carlsen if he's going to have a chance today.
Yeah, I think looking at the blitz and bullet and how it's sort of broken down here, it's clearly important for Fabi to get off to a good start. It's an obvious thing to say in any match, but just to give an example, a guy like Hikaru, he doesn't have to get off to a great start, to put it bluntly. He has that ace in the hole. He has the bullet portion that he can rely on so comfortably, and his skill there. Whereas I wouldn't say that's the case for Fabiano, despite the fact that it might be one of his better segments here, according to the prediction model, Danny. I'm not sure that I'm fully on board with the idea that he can be down going into the bullet.
No, I agree 100%. And yeah, whether it's the 5-1, as I was saying, or the 3-1. Like, he can't be down going into bullet. And like, yeah. So is it even? Is Fabi somehow with a lead? I would be fascinated to see what happens there. Fabi is working more and more on bullet. We know that he performs maybe better than people traditionally think of him in the SCC in that fastest portion. But I would be surprised if Magnus doesn't get the better of the fastest time control. So we'll see.
And look, it's been a while since they last played in the SCC. We talk about that 22-4 score where there were no wins for Fabiano in their last match. That's something that you kind of want to get the monkey off your back. Just get that win at some point in the first couple of games. I don't know whether he's thinking about it, but it's got to be somewhere, Danny. And I see them both in their Team Liquid gear. Fabi, I think, is one of those players that I almost feel he does actually improve event to event quite a bit when it comes to online chess. Maybe because he has the room to. He constantly has that rap as such a great classical player, but maybe not matching up to that very high level when it comes to speed chess. And so every time I see Fabi, I feel like he has improved.
I agree. He has. And you mentioned the Team Liquid gear. Just want to shout out that unlike the coordination that happened between Fabi and Prague, where they had the different jerseys today, both Magnus and Fabi have shown up in the championship Team Liquid gear. You and I coordinated the memo. We've got a white and black kind of chess going thing here, right? There's chessual energy between us right now. We got the light squares, the dark squares, but they didn't get the memo. You guys got to coordinate what you're wearing more often.
It should have been the other way around, Danny, with your new book. Would have made more sense, but I'm here representing for you.
Keep it dark, baby. Keep it dark. I threw on the white shirt, but I guess I'm matching Fabi and Magnus today. So anyway, we are moments away. In fact, we're about 1 minute past the top of the hour. So expecting the first moves to be made. This is like the most exciting thing in my life. I just want you to know that. I just want right now. I love commentary so much. Maybe that just sounded bad, but I'm just so excited when we get a chance to do speed chess commentary. So let's go.
That's valid, Danny. Although I'm sure there are just a few people or maybe events in your life right now that are feeling a little slighted based on that comment. But they have to understand this is, Magnus Carlsen, the highest rated player in the world, the SCC favorite. Every time he enters a competition, he is the favorite. And then you've got Fabiano, who is always touted as that next person right behind Magnus. Sometimes he's second, third, fourth in people's rankings, but he's always up there when you think about the best players in the world. So it's just whether or not he can bring that same energy in speed chess, right? We've got that format that we're all familiar with. We've seen it in the SCC. It's going to be that 5 minute, 3 minute, and bullet. But Danny, that 1 second increment is there, which I think it really does matter, and it's starting to become the norm when it comes to online chess. You have that 1 second increment to keep some, I guess, keep the game looking proper, not a complete flag fest just yet.
I mean, I think the 1 second increment is key to keeping the chess at an elite level in the SCC. Like, we've called it the great equalizer before. You see players who maybe aren't traditionally the best bullet players be able to keep up, all those things. Although I will be transparent and play poker with my cards backwards, as I often do on camera, which is that there's been discussions, given that there's been so much sudden death chess coming to our arena with the EWC. Obviously, we changed the time control of Title Tuesday. There's been discussions about that. Currently, no plans to change the increment. I love the increment in the SCC because, to me, this is our Super Bowl. This is our online elite event where the best players in the world are playing the time controls we love, and we want those moves to matter all the way down to the final second. So I like it, but I just throwing it out there that it's been discussed.
Okay, amazing. And I'm seeing here the players on cam. Of course, they're just about ready to go here. You can see that we're just moments away from beginning. And when it comes to this first couple games, I always talk about adaptability. So let's see, what openings we get, if the players are happy. Basically, when you get to the bullet portion, you want to have a good idea of a reliable opening system, types of openings that you can play to get good positions. You don't want to be figuring things out when it comes to bullet because you won't have any more time to. So you have to be good to go. And that's why I think the players use the 5 minute and the 3 minute portions to test different openings. These two have played an entire, long classical world championship match, Danny. So they have discussed some positions so in depth. What have they not talked about over the board?
It's true. They've talked and not talked for hours over the board, right? They've had the deepest conversations possible, and they've had the chess pieces do all the speaking. I like what you said, though. Again, we talk about it a lot, that the first time retail reveals, did they bring prep to the table? Is there something new they're going to try? Are they going to stick to roads commonly traveled? Okay, here we have a Sicilian to start with G3 played on E6, so we're not going to see the mainline open Sicilians, at least not right away from Magnus.
Right. And also, Fabi, they've gone back and forth in the Sicilian, not specifically this one as much as I'm used to, but, we've seen the Sicilian discussed in depth between these two. They're not going to go, maybe for the most popular one. And instead, G3 is played. This is a common blitz move that just avoids the mainline open Sicilians with D4. There might still be a pawn to D4, but if it does get played, it's usually going to be more supported with C3.
Yeah, note the pause there by Fabi after Queen E2, because White sometimes has tricky lines where you're going to play E5 and kick the knight early. He took a moment, decided he's actually not into that. He's going to keep the center closed and keep a stranglehold on D4 for now.
Yeah, rook E8 has been played. There's this weird move that happened a couple moves ago. Pawn E6 to E5. I think that probably caught a lot of us off guard. Why would you play E6 and then play E5? Well, White has also changed the setup as well. We've seen queen out to E2 early, bishops fianchettoing. This is an abnormal structure for White as well. You don't want to allow maybe that pawn to push to E5, which White was thinking about. That would open the bishop, would make sense with the queen on E2. So yes, he's lost some time, but White is developing in a bit of an unusual way.
Yeah. And now if you looked at it, you could make a guess at the move order that got you here. I think you would probably still guess E4, but it could even have been a move 1 knight F3, some sort of King's Indian attack type of structure being set up. And often in those positions, White will strive for F4, which is why Magnus brought that knight back. So we'll see what he chooses to do now that Rook B8 is played.
Yeah, sometimes you get these weird maneuvers in this opening. We're actually seeing it on the board right now. It's like the knight from B1 went to A3, C4, E3. The knight from G1 went to F3, D2. Maybe it will return to the C4 square. So just so interesting to see these knights. It's like they could have reached these squares much quicker, but they've been kind of dancing around in an unusual way, maneuvering to their best squares.
Fascinating to see an only move by the computer suggested in such a tame-looking position. Fabi does find it. I think it's because you really could not afford White to have played F5 and then start to go for this all-out attack. So interesting that Fabi senses the moment, can't let Magnus keep the structure closed, and does play the best move to keep a little more open tension in the position. So,
yep, you're highlighting exactly what everyone in this game is focusing on, the rook on E8 and the queen on E2. That in some cases allows for D5 to be played in the right moment, also B7 to B5, and then onwards to B4, looking to carve out the D4 square for the C6 knight. Of course, Magnus would look to leave the pawn on C3, never play C4, never take on B4, but in terms of counterplay for Fabi, it's probably going to be with that B pawn. That's why he has the rook on B8 and perhaps even G6, and looking to get that bishop on the long diagonal.
Yeah, I like that. That's a slow plan there. Though I like what Fabi has gotten over here on the queen side too with B5. Whether he keeps going with things like B4 or not, it already feels like Black has maintained the position, and that's not just because the computer thinks it's 50-50. I think just about everything is equal here. They're also pretty close on the clocks. Both players kind of finding their pace here. So, this is gonna be a day today. Magnus Fabi. You and I have had some close matches so far, Amon. Knock on wood. We've had some good luck. I just knocked on wood for us, not to jinx it.
Thank you. Yeah, looking out.
You're welcome.
We see, rook A8 because the bishop on C1 can't move. Now, it seems like, we've got the highest rated player in the world just, forgetting to finish development, but it's actually kind of a feature of these openings. Notice how the bishop is guarding the B pawn, which could come under attack, queen A1, queen A2. So it's really kind of helpful for Magnus to say, okay, let's trade the rooks on the A file. that wasn't doing anything for me. My focus is more in the center and on the king side, and the bishop on c1, truthfully, can do all it needs to do on the king side from c1. So it's just about getting maybe the other pieces out of the way in front of it. And we see a very combative move here that is getting a question mark, Danny, but Magnus is not playing this for no reason. He's calculated something.
Yeah, it's a practical shot, too, taking advantage of the temporary pin on the long diagonal because that knight on c6 can't move without losing a rook. White has two pieces attacking a8, kind of an x-ray through this. So is Black going to take twice and take with the rook? That is what Magnus is inviting. But what is the tactical? Ooh, he has knight e4. He's taking advantage of another knight pin with f7 being under fire.
Yeah, and you're all in on, removing the pieces. For example, bishop e7, he might even be thinking about knight takes f6 followed by knight to d5. Or maybe in some weird way you could play knight d5 first. I don't know. But I think it's all about that f7 square and the pressure generated on the f file. However, the computer is saying that everything's okay. It might have to do with the fact that the rook on e5 in the right moment when the e3 knight moves could slide to f5. And that, I think, deals with that f file. Yeah, the pressure nicely on the f file.
Yeah, I used the blue arrow there because I wanted to highlight Amon's suggestion would be maybe the computer idea. But another idea could be that once you play bishop e7, you also have the... Okay, he brings the queen over right away. I was going to say the queen isn't stuck on a8. She can slide over and also start to help. Computer did not like that move order, though. Really wanted Fabiano to play bishop e7 first.
Right. Yeah, I guess just... Well, here there's knight takes f6, and there is a pawn hanging there, so... Just at the minimum, there's that available. I think Magnus already could say that his idea is worth it, but he does go for that knight d5 move. I mentioned this one last turn. We didn't have to take on f6. We could just go immediately. The idea is, again, f7 is falling, and if you take with the rook, knight takes f6 now, picks up the rook on d5. Yeah,
we got to analyze this just to show the tactics, because Amon called it. Nice eye, and now it's on the board. If rook, well, I'm just going to quickly show. If rook takes, as Amon was saying, you take on f6 with check, and then no matter how Black takes back, you're picking up the rook here. So that's how you get away with that knight being on pre. But we don't need to show what happens if knight takes, because it's exactly what Fabi did, and it's already on the board. Queen takes f7. I think Magnus will just recoup the bishop, or is there something else here?
The reality is there doesn't need to be anything else. Like, that is already very good. The only other moves you're trying to look at are maybe knight g5, bishop e4 check, but it just, like I said, unnecessary. You've got the bishop pair, you've got an extra pawn. There's probably a very important move, if I had to guess here, because I'm surprised that... Or actually, hang on a sec. I correct myself. Not an extra pawn.
Not an extra pawn, because Magnus sacked,
Yep, he sacked, exactly. So, I was wondering why the evaluation could be so close to equal here. This is the advantage, I think, that Magnus was looking for. And key difference, Danny, that bishop e7 move that the engine liked, it would have saved the bishop from being hanging in this exact line.
Yeah. No, totally. And well said that Magnus isn't up a pawn yet, but he does have the bishop pair, which makes other pawns weaker. Can't take just yet. Rook e1 check would be lights out. So Magnus has to think about how he wants to either get the bishop in the game. Okay, he does go to d2, which is nice, because not only does it guard e1, but it might even have plans to use e1 and eventually relocate to some different diagonals. Although I think if Magnus gets one more move, the rook coming over here behind the pawns is an idea, although as I highlighted, you can't do any of it yet because the knight and bishop guard everything. So keep an eye out for the rook swinging over to attack Black's queenside pawns.
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting for maybe a move like c4. I don't know if it was possible or the right idea on that last move, but pawn to c4 undermines the e4 knight in a nice way. But moves that attack the rook were bothering Fabi, which is why he brought the knight back to defend that bishop on f5 for exactly this reason. Bishop to f4, pawn to d4, moves hitting the rook were kind of annoying. Notice how the bishop on g3 does defend e1, so knight c5 is a threat.
It's funny, the only move was king to g6 because of knight to c5, and Magnus doesn't have to be asked twice. He finds it. That rook is running out of squares. You got all kinds of problems
C6. There. Yeah, rook e2, bishop c6, or rook f5, like some combination. You're losing something, and well, he says, okay, let's take on d3. Knight takes e6, d2. Is that the idea? And then maybe bishop f3. Oh my goodness, what is this?
Wow. Magnus played rook takes. that's a fascinating move instead of just taking the rook. I guess on d2, couldn't you have still played bishop f3? So I don't know what Magnus calculated fully there. I think just taking e6 was the best computer line, but here we go. Back to 50-50 if Fabi finds the best move, which he does. He's going to pick up his piece back.
Yeah, he's going to get the piece, and I think the really nasty part is the knight on d1 is situated perfectly to win one of the pawns on the queen side, so should be doing a good job. I imagine we're going to see knight c7, this kind of move in order to try to take that b pawn.
Interesting. b4 first, trying to cement the b5 pawn. He's going to probably protect c3. Yeah, he does that so that he can go back to your idea with knight to c7 next. I think in a practical sense, I still like White's chances here, but definitely not the most Magnus could have gotten from that blunder earlier.
Yeah, if you could trade a pair of knights here, I think Fabi would be nearly winning the endgame. But of course, both players here are well aware of that, and we're certainly not going to see it happen.
Yeah, and Fabi doing the best, though. He's going to go remove that bishop. Oop, nope. You go there, but now the knight comes to e4. Now. Yeah, this bishop is running out of squares. Fabi's in a great spot here.
The knight will guard b5 after knight takes c3, by the way. It's definitely riskier to be playing with the...
I have no idea what we have here. This is going to be wild.
Because you can go knight c4 to a3 or knight c4 to d6 and guard the pawn. Is he losing connection? The webcam, he looked upset about some connection there.
What happened there?
Well, obviously, yeah. I'm not sure if the webcam is anything to read into. Like, the quality of it is what I mean, because I have been noticing that Fabi's cam quality here is, not the highest, but clearly he wasn't liking something even before his time was running out. I'm not sure he was able to get that moving.
Yeah, that's super frustrating. I don't know where Fabi's playing from. He doesn't look like he's in his normal home setup based on the Fabiano we know. So whatever happened there with the connection is highly unfortunate, but it is unfortunately one of the things you have to factor in a high stakes online match. So we're going to see if the team is working with Fabiano to figure something out, or if it's just a bad connection.
Frustrating. Really very frustrating, Danny, but it almost goes back, and I think about that interview that we saw right at the top of the show where it was like, playing in person versus playing at home. And I'll just comment, I don't know if this is true for him, but for me, one thing I can understand about that is it's nice to play in front of an audience because it's no longer your connection. You know what I mean? You're not responsible as much for your own connection. You're kind of usually playing on the highest possible conditions, and it kind of removes that element of, am I connected properly, and I think that is one of the reasons why I would say I much prefer to play in that situation.
Yeah, I agree, and also just being comfortable with what because even if sometimes you have connection issues at home, you kind of have a little bit more experience on how to troubleshoot it, right? So I don't know where Fabi is. He's working with the team now. It's both related to game ops and fair play ops, just in terms of how we operate at chess.com. We've got the players always on second cameras and screen shares, and so we're going to make sure that we can refresh and give Fabi the best support he can. But all right, let's go over the end of this game, Amon, and just see what maybe could have happened, because I think we were headed for a draw until Fabi's unfortunate mishap.
Yeah, it was right here. Pawn takes on b4. Obviously, Magnus is waiting for a pretty critical decision. So I can, him running out of time is a different story. But this being a difficult decision, I do understand, because do you play knight f1 here and grab h2 and say, okay, the b pawn is actually quite far away from my king, and my knight, I'm not sure, this is where time is a factor. I don't know if my knight can scramble all the way back successfully to catch that b pawn, because my king cannot. Or do I play knight c4 and knight a3 and just kind of camp out and try to be as tricky as possible, defend, and eventually sack my knight? So I feel like I would maybe take the knight c4 a3 or knight c4 d6 approach here.
And just checking because we're in analysis mode, I turned on the engine lines, which we don't normally have. We have the eval bar, and you are right. In fact, it's really instructive to see that this could get dangerous. I think the king can go to different squares, but there just are spots where this B pawn is going to be so hard for Black to deal with. It's not how many pawns you have in endgames like this. It's who gets a queen first.
And
right?
I think we have the game. I think we have the game back. Which is why we're going to jump back into it here. As exciting as that end game is, and believe me, I was on the edge of my seat in that knight end game with passed pawns. I'd have to say that game number 2 is probably higher on my list.
Okay, you were right. I missed that we were back, and happy to see that Fabiano, whatever we needed to work on there. Shout out to the team working hard to help.
Yeah, they actually shout out to the team because they must have just got on it much better and quicker than expected. It's a good problem to have, let's say.
Yeah, here we go. All right, well, let's see. We got an end game. We were already more than a minute and a half in, so my apologies for that. Do we want to back up and see the opening? I thought we were going to be in a night ending for a minute.
Let's especially because now it's probably a bit more thought placed into the moves. Let's do a brief scan of the opening there.
Okay. Queen's Gambit,
pretty thematic stuff, and you see the delayed knight on G1 usually means it's going to E2. Otherwise, we would have seen knight F3 much earlier on in the position.
This is pretty straightforward, traditional Queen's Gambit.
I'll say that the move A4 to me is like I would. It's almost like if I was coaching a student, I would say that's probably a mistake, like a move not to play. But I certainly won't use that move here with Fabi. He's at that level of excellence in chess that he can now make those quote unquote mistakes again. Like he's good enough to know when they're allowed to be played. And trust me, the idea is much deeper. But usually you probably wouldn't do it because it weakens the B4 square. We can see how Fabi continued. He's saying, let me shut down what's going on there. Let me shut down what's going on there and maybe go for F3, E4. But it looks like things liquidated much quicker because of this push with C5.
No, it's a good point because normally this setup is designed for F3 and E4. That's why you're doing the rook thing, and that's why you have the knight not on the F3 square. So to go back to the traditional development of the knight on F3, but not have the quote-unquote minority attack, which is what white often does in this structure to advance the 2 pawns, the queen side. So white kind of didn't have either plan here, which means I feel like advantage Magnus. And as we get caught up to the live game, black did kind of get a good spot here. Although, wow, these tactics got wild.
Yeah, at this point, you're really focused on a position that is fundamentally better for white. Like the structure, everything is better. So that's why Magnus is going knight A4, knight B2. He's happy to get a mess here because it doesn't look good if white just plays B3, solidifies A4. So I understand why Magnus went for this, but it also does not reek of desperation. He kind of looks like he's inviting all of this, and he's happy to sack the exchange because of this great C4 square anchored in, and this B pawn, which is actually quite dangerous.
Yeah, he does sack the exchange. Fabi goes for it, and then gives it right back with rook to B1 because he'd rather eliminate this dangerous B pawn than keep the exchange. And just like that, we're pretty much caught up to the live position where the endgame is teeny bit better for black because you have this extra pawn, but it's currently well blockaded by Fabi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, king F8, it's almost a remarkably tame position here with that 1 pawn advantage. I will say it's probably a little bit worse for Fabi than the engine's giving it credit for. I would say this is kind of significant here. The king on H1 is quite far from the action. It appears as though there's a bit of a bishop A6. Like, if bishop A6 can work and you can get your hands on this B pawn, then equality is a little bit easier to find because bishop A6, bishop C8, knight C6 is a very funny looking, like, I guess, exploiting the pin and then taking the B7 pawn. So I think that variation is why we saw H3, so that there's no back rank issues for the white king. But I'm not sure that you're actually claiming this pawn. I think it's all about that calculation, Danny.
Well, because bishop c8 does 2 things. It doesn't just overprotect the pawn. It actually frees up the d7 square, right? To Amon's point, don't play king e7 because you get these weird tactics. But if you play bishop a6 now, knight to d7 can attack the rook. And now you're choosing either keeping the pin, which will let the pawn advance maybe at some point, or you move the rook off, and that would, of course, lose your bishop. So I think bishop
Well, I got
c8 was a
another
very
one for you, Danny.
smart
Like
move. Yeah.
you're pointing out king e7, knight c6, but another funny one is a bishop, bishop a6, and if rook a8, bishop takes b7, it's almost rook b8, right? And it's like, it's like I, back into this pin, and I'm like getting lost trying to calculate who's actually getting out ahead. Rook takes f6 might have to be played there.
It's wild. I do think knight to d7 would be, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So this is all kinds of weird tactics, but it is the key storyline of the game. Will white find a way to not just keep this pawn blockaded, but maybe create other problems, or does black get enough time to? Okay, where are we at?
Well, I'm looking at no camera here for Fabi. That's where we're at. I mean, his time's ticking down. I don't see a webcam.
Oh no, I didn't even see it.
It's looking like bad to worse type of thing. Same situation. I actually, maybe to Game Op's credit, I didn't realize that they had figured things out that quickly. I thought they were still looking into that. And I don't know. It looks like it's kind of same troubles here for Fabi to navigate.
Wait, was king e7 actually played?
There's no way.
Yeah. I mean, the game's going on. King e7.
I'm not going to lie, Danny. We were on the analysis board here. I thought that you took us here and were showing the tactic, instructive moment.
I was letting you finish your sentence. I didn't want to interrupt, but I was sitting there wondering whether because there was no hands, Dan. It wasn't me. I think king e7 was a blunder by Magnus, and Fabi just maybe because of his time-related issues, which is unfortunately a really ominous.
At that point, we weren't even sure. Maybe Fabi, if he was connect, he's probably just almost getting back to the position, just happy to make a move so that he's continuing to play. And it just so happened that in that moment Magnus blundered, but it's so unlike Magnus with all that time. I don't know what we just witnessed, actually, Danny. I'm as confused as probably our audience is right now, watching Fabi navigate time pressure and Magnus blunder away his pawn there, blunder away the exchange with king e7 is very uncharacteristic.
Couldn't agree more, but king e7 definitely did happen, or it wouldn't be on d6. So there was no relay error here, right? This isn't a DGT board, folks, right? This isn't some sort of you pressed the wrong square. So there's no world where the king is on e5 if it hadn't gone to e7, which means we did see that blunder by Magnus right at the craziness of Fabi losing his connection again. Okay, this could be a wild day for reasons we didn't anticipate. Amon, who knows what's ahead for us?
Exactly. I mean, I guess we are just kind of back into the game normally here, and assuming that Fabi's kind of maintaining his connection just fine, I guess we're sort of headed towards equality. I do think that, if anyone's having a conversation about maybe being slightly better, could it be Fabi here with this pawn? I like the dark square control, but ultimately, I don't think with a minute that Magnus is really going to let anything happen here, right?
Well, I'm more worried about Fabi's connection in regards. I mean, yes, Magnus has more time, and I'm just the position that Fabiano lost in game one, for those just tuning in, was also a draw, and Fabiano lost on time. He's struggling with the connection, not in his normal setup. So I look at Fabi's time and go, uh-oh, I hope he doesn't get in that spot again. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There was actually a moment instead of bishop c2 where I thought a funny move, maybe even a good one, was g6. Sacking the pawn in order to play king g5, king f6. Apart from that, there doesn't look like there's too much for these players to play for. But if I'm Magnus, I'm playing on a little bit because, there's clearly some connection issues here. You never know what's going to happen. The game does end in a draw, a fair result. And I think, Danny, at this point, after kind of both games going in a similar trend at the end for Fabi, it's actually something to take a look at.
Agreed, and that's exactly what the team is going to do. We're being told that there's going to be the break now. We normally have it about halfway through, so we will keep you posted if this is our official break, if it's a break specifically to help Fabiano. But it looks like we're going to take a break, Amon.
Yeah, definitely after a couple instances, time to take a look at it. We will be right back, but after this break.
Epidemic Sound is way more than just a music library. You can access the full Epidemic Sound catalog from literally anywhere. Their sound tracking tools fit seamlessly into creative workflows, on mobile, web, and through plugins. If you have a song you already like, you simply copy and paste a Spotify link to that song into the Epidemic Sound search bar, and you'll be sound matched with similar music to the songs that you already love. With Epidemic Sound, you get expert control of every track. You can create custom track versions by adjusting length, looping sections, and precisely selecting which parts of the song you want to exclude or include. Epidemic Sound provides different licenses for all different types of productions. It doesn't matter if you create videos on YouTube or if you're creating videos for an agency. Epidemic has a license to cover it and lets you publish anywhere online. Creating videos couldn't be easier. Try Epidemic Sound today.
शानदार ऑनलाइन एक्शन गेम वॉर थंडर आपके उबाऊ सप्ताह के दिनों को खत्म करने के लिए तैयार है। प्रसिद्ध जापानी बैटलशिप यामातो
Welcome back. S Championship. Magnus and Fabi are continuing, and Danny, you can obviously feel it on Fabi's webcam there on his face. Like, he's a little bit frustrated, but from what I understand, going to push through and continue here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and don't really know where Fabi is in the world, actually. We stay in pretty regular touch. I know he was on vacation, and obviously anyone can see that he's not in his normal setup. But it is part of the rules. It is actually part of literally the player's agreement / contract, and something that we really do push and emphasize, because it's not something we can really control, right? You get the convenience of an online event, but the responsibility of assuring that you are in a great spot. So we are all hoping that it's not the major storyline today.
Yep, and as we get back into things, one of the interesting things about this opening is I'm really sitting here wondering when the last time we saw it in an SCC was, because the Benoni is not a regular participant here. But I will say, Danny, the reason that we're seeing it looks like the G3 move. It is kind of a thing that if you see D4, C4, G3 in the opening, you respond to it with C5 and invite the Benoni, because this is, you know, quote unquote, the worst Benoni that you can play as white, and it's still pretty good.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, because it's the worst Benoni you can play as white, and black is still at least slightly worse. But yeah, the Benoni structure that D6, C5 versus white's kind of extended D pawn and the potential to play for E4 and F4. The G3 system is not as dangerous for black. You aren't expanding as quickly, but white still enjoys a comfortable space edge.
Exactly. That's what the opening is all about. This idea of playing... hang on a sec. Is this a piece? He's got a smirk on his face like it is. Bishop D7. This is the move knight A3. It stops B5, and the reason it's so good is you can't actually make B5 happen because you need D7 to support it, but you also need that square for your knight. And is what we're talking about. This Benoni is such a frustrating opening. I understand why Fabi played knight h5 and quickly, Danny, because he trapped his own knight, plain and simple. That's all there is to it. He's just trying to get counterplay at this point. Knight on h5, hitting the g3 pawn as well. So yeah, the idea is exactly this. Pawn takes on e5, bishop takes on e5, and at this point, if we see maybe like g4, perhaps the idea. Oh, this is surprising. And actually, the blue arrow from the engine is even more surprising, just to me as a commentator. My thought is you always want to take this dark square bishop for the knight. So I was thinking knight takes on f4, g takes on f4, maybe bishop d4 check, with the black queen coming to h4, and maybe rook to e3, kind of attacking the h3 pawn. That's what I was expecting, but the blue arrow from the engine here, Danny, is saying bishop takes on f4, presumably with queen h4 and rook e3 in mind, and it would be truly shocking if Fabi hung a piece and found a way back into this.
Yeah, sorry, what a wild day going on right now. The chess is wild. The only thing more wild is everyone's internet connection. Like I said, Mercury must be in retrograde or something. I don't know what's going on with the universe right now. But wow, okay, look at this. Knight takes g3, the miss instead of the line you said, and
yeah, initially I was thinking knight takes f4, but computer was saying, hang on, bishop takes on f4, which is unusual because why would you not want to maintain your dark square bishop at the end of the line? So I totally understand what Fabi is thinking, but you just don't get to do it. Bishop e5 is going to be met by knight c4, bishop d4 check by e3. There's no way to keep that bishop just dominating on those dark squares the way you'd like. So for that reason, Magnus is definitely far ahead, but has to be said, despite Fabi's, let's call it, maybe connection issues, Danny, and then also here spilling into his chess as well, hanging a full piece, I will say Magnus has blundered in a number of games in moments where you'd be shocked that he did.
No, I agree, and I'm just going to say it. It's awkward when we're dealing with maybe the two best chess players in their generation. I don't know, but this hasn't been the best chess today, Amon. I'm just going to say it. Like there's been a lot of blunders, right? It's been wild, and obviously there are many who would maybe try to challenge that, but these guys are definitely objectively two of the best, and I'm just not as impressed as I normally am so far. And it just been weird. So Magnus just gave back the piece, but he's got a bunch of targets, so I guess White still has a big advantage here now.
Well, he's up a rook, so this is...
I didn't even notice the rook. Sorry, I'm just like... There's so much going on here. Yeah, he's
basically got it, you would think. Like, at this point, f7 is a target. It was Fabi that wanted to maintain his dark square bishop, to our point earlier about knight c4 coming. He wanted to keep it so bad, he was willing to sack the exchange. I don't know if that's the right decision or not, but it was the one that he decided to do. You can't move the bishop on f5 because of the f7 pawn. So it is really, really tough to play this position. I don't really know what we're going to see next from Fabi. Like h5, h4 comes to mind, but yeah, you really don't have any threats.
I mean, you're down a rook. And by the way, the knight coming to c4 wasn't just useful because it hits d6 and guards e3, but it also opens up the a3 square for the rook, not only to swing across the third rank, but maybe to go to b3. So Fabi is going to realize very quickly that being down a rook is probably just too much, even if he, solidifies the bishop or whatever else. So
that's actually a great point, Danny, because I was looking at b5, and that's the answer. It's that rook a3 move, I think. We're hitting the bishop before you have time to cement with h4, h5, h4, and that's why we're seeing different reactions. But rook a3 is actually a key defensive resource, and that was a big spot.
Okay, well, rook e4 played, but the computer says rook a3, the only way for White to maintain the large advantage he has. Magnus finds it. And now probably your call of e3. It's awkward when there's a bunch of pieces hanging, but that bishop is run out of squares, and you would gladly trade the dark squared bishop for that knight on c4. And in fact, Magnus finds it.
I agree. Yep. This is about the end of the line, because I don't see a place for that bishop. We see a little head shake there from Fabi. He's under a minute. I think this is, like I said, pretty much the end because rook takes on c4. Just take on f4. At that point, you start to have a conversation of like, this is a full rook, and knight d2 and e4 I'm expecting just to kind of seal things.
Yeah, and the dark square bishop has survived, to his credit. You got to give the bishop credit because Fabi's been willing to give up every piece in their cousin to keep that piece alive. And at least right now, he will keep the bishop for a little longer, willing to lose the light square bishop instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, d2 is hanging, so he is going to grab it. Yes, there are some chances with these bishops. Despite being that rook down, it is only +3 or so. Instead of you might think like, +4, +5. Not quite. There is a little bit of counterplay, but there's just no threats to make. It's really just whether Fabi can keep the position solid enough that it's tough to break through, but you will always be able to break through with that extra rook.
Yeah, rooks are just too much. In fact, now Magnus is like, look, I'm going to get rid of this bishop, happily giving up a rook, and just use my extra minor piece if you let me. I wonder if he'll take first. Although it is funny. You have to give Fabi credit that despite being down a rook, it hasn't been so clear yet. Now he has this c pawn. Although the more we look at it and the more you look at the clock, it's probably just delaying the inevitable right now.
Yeah, the clock is really telling the story here. There's also a few situations where you might be able to make use of rook takes e5 with the idea of getting the queen to h6. Even better. Don't even need to take the bishop to make it happen because of the back rank threats. Queen f4 looking to play queen h6, but also picking up the dangerous c pawn, which was really the only semblance of counterplay.
Yeah. And now rook takes e5 is going to be back on the agenda. If you want, if you're into it,
queen
get rid of
e7
the bishop.
maybe.
Oh,
queen e7 is just like.
Did you eat your breakfast this morning? You spotted a couple nice ideas, with that the knight maneuver earlier in the game, and now at the first game, and now queen e7. I like it.
Yeah, had the Wheaties, Danny.
You did. You hit those Wheaties, and I love it. All right. Well, Magnus taking a minute to figure out how he wants to convert on his full rook advantage. He loves Amon Hamilton's queen e7. I was going to say, I still expect that bishop to just leave the board at some point, and now you're just up a piece.
Yeah. You have the d pawn here, which you're just going to play rook d1, d7, and he does even better, rook a1. Yep. No doubt that this is going to be a win.
And is that the game that takes us to our halfway point, or we get one more? It looks like one more squeezed in before we officially get over that halfway timer. Again, we take a break at halftime in each of these two longer time controls, the 5-minute and the 3-minute portion, if for some reason you're new to the Speed Chess Championship. But if I'm Fabi, I'm almost disappointed at getting to that break, getting a chance to just collect myself, given how unfortunate this start has been, both on the board and with the internet issues.
Yep, exactly right. I mean, in some ways, I don't think it could have started worse for Fabi, because one of the things I was saying was, especially before that first break, it's like, get a win on the board, because it's starting to really get up there in total games without a win in the SCC against Magnus for Fabi. And that starts to get to you. In this match, it kind of started out with, look, there were chances, right? There was that king e7 move by Magnus with knight c6. Even in this game, or the last one rather, the Benoni, there was a chance playing bishop takes f4, even after hanging a piece. So he can't be completely disappointed here, because despite everything that's maybe gone wrong for Fabi, he has had his moments.
Yep. He has had his moments. Will he get a moment here? I'm openly rooting for Fabi now to get his first win against Magnus in the SCC in and I think more than 2 years, actually. For those who missed some of our pregame breakdown, Magnus beat Fabiano Caruana the last time they played in the Speed Chess Championship, and Fabiano did not win a single game in that match. So, again, we all want Fabi to win. I think Magnus wants Fabi to win at this point. Like, let's go. For Team Liquid.
Yeah, exactly. I predict the winner of this match is going to be someone from Team Liquid. A shocker there. Bishop g5, maybe provoking sometimes the move h6. Then you can gain some time with queen c1. Also reserving this bishop on c2 can make an appearance on b3 in the future. So there's some pressure to be placed on these pawns, right? You play king h7 to defend h6, then suddenly maybe the f7 pawn needs a little bit more attention. So let's see how Fabi handles this. It's definitely going to be our last game before our break. Not that he knows that, or that's even a 1% thought right now for him. But this is an opening that I think he is pretty happy with compared to the ones that he's been playing so far, like the Pannoni. I think he's much more comfortable here. And this, I think, is a big moment. 2.5, 1.5 going into the break, Danny. That's a huge achievement for Fabi based on how things have started.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And this opening is a big achievement as compared to the other few he's had. And again, also the time on the clock. Now, as I say it is even and Fabi lower for the first time. But for the most part in this game, the other achievement has been that Fabi had his first real edge on the clock. And you really like to see him maintain that. So he has a better position. I love how you pointed out the advanced ideas of why the bishops go up and they provoke and then back up. I think that's instructive for viewers to kind of understand some of those grandmaster maneuvers. And now you've got tactics with bishop b3. You might even try to open up the queenside structure in some positions. Fabi's taken a moment to really think about where he wants this one to go.
Yeah, if you're considering bishop b3, then the other consideration is, do I want my b pawn in front of that bishop when I play it? You mentioned c4. Could be an idea here, but the d pawn is immediately going to be loose. This is getting wild, as it's actually Magnus who's interested in opening everything up, right? This is kind of surprising, but there it is, d5, and which side is basically more ready to handle the open center? Yeah, I'm actually looking also at so after e takes d5, if you take knight takes d5, there is maybe the move c4 to consider. In some cases, you could just take everything in the center and play from there. But I'm getting the feeling that if everything exchanges, that somehow Magnus's pieces are going to be positioned a little bit nicer. Like the c3 pawn will be weak from the bishop on g7 and maybe a knight on d5. And the queen on c1 is blocking the rook on a1 from going to d1 and occupying the center. So this is definitely a tough spot, and I can understand maybe why Magnus is taking some time here, and we do see c4. I just don't think there was an option for d takes e5 there. There was no way that you could just capture on e5, allow Magnus's pieces to take the center. That's like, queens on d8, rook e8, and meanwhile, white is super slow, playing queen b2, rook a to d1. Don't really care for it. So I think that c4 was the right decision, and I wouldn't be surprised if, let's think here. Where's this knight going to go? I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if rook b1 happens, or d5 to shut everything down, and then maybe rook b1 to hit the bishop on b7. So I kind of thought that d5 was the move there, but tempted by perhaps a free pawn.
Am I back?
Hello, Danny.
Hey,
you're back. I just had a really long, extended thought there. I just wanted to grab the mic and really, really say my piece.
Hey, if anyone didn't even know I was gone, then that's a really great transition by the production and by Amon Hamilton. So sorry for breaking the fourth wall there. But the world is wild today. I'm also struggling with internet issues here at an amazing studio office we have that I have not struggled with internet issues in a very long time. So who knows what's going on? Me and Fabi are in this together right now.
There you go. Well, the position that you've come back to is actually, I want to say, very similar to the one you might have left in. Slight edge for Fabi. But the moves that have happened to get us here, Danny, we've actually seen big advantages slip and be offered by both sides. I do think Magnus is playing pretty loose today. There's been a lot of opportunities for Fabi. So far, in most of the moments where he's had an opportunity to claim, an advantage, he hasn't taken it. And those are starting to stack up in my head as missed opportunity, and how many does Magnus realistically offer? Probably less than most competitors in the event, which means if you're passing them up and missing those small moments where they do exist, they're not going to be back.
Yeah, Magnus doesn't give you many, right? As they say. And if you swing at the king, you best not miss, right? You don't want to be in a spot where you look back and had a lot of opportunities. Just to show quickly, because e takes e5 was there. Bishop to c6 by Magnus got out of it. And so the main thing I'm just going to show was that right here, I guess, I was gone. You didn't want to take e5, apparently. Okay. Sorry, showing it to kind of get caught up with the blunder you were referencing. And now where are we at? Fabi still has a little...
Not so easy now, right? This is a much different position. I was mentioning that it felt like if the center completely opened, that Black's pieces would be situated a little bit better to handle it. So I do credit Fabi for playing this rook a3 to e3. It happened actually by Magnus in the previous game, but rook a3 to e3, really nice activation. That fixes the problem, because I was thinking the queen on c1 is stopping me from playing rook d1. So I'm really bothered by this. And then to get this coordination, I think Fabi has done pretty well here, but still opportunities missed, and we're in a position where the engine is recommending a completely crazy move, knight d3, which means, Danny, because it's not played, there's a big opportunity for Fabi.
Yeah, and the engine goes right back with a blue arrow for white, saying queen e3 is the only way to capitalize on Magnus missing knight to d3. And the point is, if the queens come off the board, everybody, this battery just becomes too much, because the knight is pinned to the rook on e8, and all of a sudden white just has a ton of pressure. I think white is winning at least a pawn after the move f6, and Fabi finds it. No hands there. The queens are going to come off, and I think Fabi might be in a chance to get his first win of the match. Let's go.
Yeah, queen e3 is a big one. Now, it's very hard to not capture on e3, so I think that was more or less forced. You do have this idea of the bishop taking on e5, maybe followed by f4. The one thing there was I was wondering about knight e4 first, with the idea that if the knight moved from e5, Danny, there was knight takes f6, winning that rook on e8. So you had an opportunity to bring the knight in, threaten the f6 pawn. Now, I understand why he did this. It's a great looking knight on e4, but I think, once again, he let Magnus off the hook just a little bit.
You were right. Computer liked your line better. For those wondering what it was Amon's knight e4 first. Just checked over here on my other screen. And now white still has an edge here. That knight is sitting pretty on a beautiful square. But yeah, it's like the rook is so active. And if you're not going to actually target these pawns, how are you really converting on anything as Fabi?
Yep. Yeah, rook e3, rook e6 rather. Everything's guarded now, and you can see 20 seconds left. Fabi he's got a fine position, but fine is, not really good enough. The momentum, I think, is actually shifting the other way as we see a few head shakes from Fabi. He's got to maintain his composure here to not let it keep swinging.
Yeah, and he's down to under 20 seconds, so his time advantage I mentioned earlier gone, and you know that he struggled with some internet lag today, and so you worry about that. But can he keep up on the clock and on the board? The edge is basically gone.
Yeah, bishop e7 and activating this king. I have to say king h6 for me is a little bit weird, because I guess I'm not sure. There's no king g5 coming. I would have expected the king to come in the other way, but this is actually setting up an idea I hadn't considered, bringing the bishop into g5 and stationing it on f4, and then maybe the king can kind of go around the other way.
Yeah, a nice spot for the bishop to guard everything. Oh, no, Magnus is going to go for a different idea, maybe back to your original one. Going to slide the king over, gets into f5, but where do you go next? I mean, it feels like a lot of this is just pushing Fabi on the clock, because how do you get in when the knight is just holding every single light/dark square?
Yeah, there's 5 seconds, so you don't always have to get in. Like, there doesn't have to be an answer. You can kind of wait for a potential blunder. The rooks are tied down to that c-pawn. There's really nothing that will change that, and I don't see any way for the rooks to adjust or for the knight to move. Right, the knight on e4, if it stays there. Okay, there we see a change in the position, c5.
Yeah, now Fabi's saying he might be the one who's still pushing a little bit. Both sides are going to be under 10 seconds here in a moment. I wonder if Fabi will regret not having just repeated the moves there.
Yeah, it's possible. There could be a repetition here as well, but as black, you don't have to take this.
Yeah, but it looks like Magnus is going to, and we do have a draw, which I guess at least from Fabiano's perspective, you kind of stop the bleeding. You're down 2 games headed into halftime. Not what you wanted, but yeah, it could still be worse.
Exactly. But, I think no matter what, Fabi just needs a break, period, right? He just needs to reset. Yeah. That was such a strange start to the match. If he ever goes over those games, he'll immediately see, oh, there was chances for me here, here, and here. He almost had a big moment in every single game to potentially flip things around. Magnus has sort of been playing the man a little bit. He knows that Fabi's not quite settled into the match yet. He's keeping things a little bit loose. And that's why he has a 3-1 lead right now, Danny.
But both players are keeping things a little bit loose on the board. This hasn't been the best showing yet from either of them. We've seen blunders, not normally coming from these two guys, because we know the caliber of chess they maintain. So it feels like it's been a wild start. Fabi hopefully gets the break he needs, maybe stabilizes his connection even further, and can get his first win against Magnus Carlsen in the SCC in a very long time. Yep.
Well, I'm excited for the rest of this section. And speaking of Chess.com is excited to announce Zenni as the official eyewear partner. Whether you need prescription glasses, sunglasses, or blue light protection, Zenni has the perfect fit for you. You can explore hundreds of styles in a range of shapes, materials, colors. Try them on at home with Zenni's virtual try-on feature. So look no further for your perfect pair of glasses through October 31st. I'm just going to say much later than that, through until now. 15% off with SCC 15, !Zenni in chat to claim your offer. We're going to take a break, and there's 5+1 returning after this.
You already optimize for Google. Now, optimize for AI. Use SEMrush One to claim and fuel your visibility across traditional and AI search. Win every kind of search with SEMrush One.
ऑनलाइन बेचो क्या? ऑर्डर्स आएंगे क्या?
आप सोच रहे हो लोग कमा रहे हैं? अब बस सोचते रहोगे या रजिस्टर करोगे?
मीशो चुनो, 5 मिनट में बिजनेस ऑनलाइन रजिस्टर करो और आगे बढ़ो.
Questions for you. So how many subscribers on YouTube and followers on Twitch does Hikaru have combined?
I saw something recently that he got 2 million on Twitch, so I saw the announcement somewhere. So going 2 million Twitch and 2.5 YouTube, I'll say 4.5 million total.
Wow, I think that's exactly correct.
Yeah. Actually, I don't check his channel, but I just remember seeing the announcement like 2 days ago or something. So some luck there.
How many times has Fabiano won the US championship?
Okay, so Fabiano, he didn't win in 2020, so at least there's no asterisk. He's won it 4 times. 4 times he's won the US championship.
Correct. When is Hikaru's birthday?
When is his birthday? I actually don't think I have any clue. I'm gonna say end of the year. I don't know why, but like I know Magnus is in December. I'm gonna go Hikaru in November, but I wouldn't even be able to guess the date, and probably the month is wrong, and I have no idea.
December 9th.
Oh, should have gone December.
What state was Fabiano born?
Also very easy. He was born. He was born in Florida, but more specifically Miami.
In what popular HBO series did Hikaru have a cameo in a few years back?
This one I know because I was also invited, but then they went with Hikaru. It was Billions.
At what age did Fabiano become a grandmaster?
Okay, I became a grandmaster at 15. He definitely broke it. I'm trying to remember, was he 15 or was he 14? It was like 15 years, 87 days. For whatever reason, I don't know for sure, but for some reason 14 is not ringing a bell. So I think he was also 15, but like just a couple of days. So I think it was 15. If he was 14, I'd be surprised, but I'll go with 15.
I think it's 14 years, 11 months.
Ah, it wasn't even 15. Okay.
Everybody has days where they just don't feel up for it. You look in the mirror and you're not your full self. NeuroGum, energy and focus. I know a guy who uses the gum to help get ready for his day. And it tastes good. That's the energy and focus this guy needs to go bring smiles to the faces of chess pieces everywhere. There he is. That's my guy. Always forward, never back. NeuroGum, helping little pawns feel big since 2015.
Whether it's sunglasses outside, blue light glasses inside, or night driving lenses in the dark, Zenni has affordable eyewear for everyone at zenni.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to the 2025 Speed Chess Championship. Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana, an all-Team Liquid matchup. Danny, it's been a wild start to this one. Probably a start that I think Fabi would like to have back, but let's be honest, with the level that these players are showing, we've both realized it's not quite their peak. They can both improve on a lot of things. Magnus has been playing a little bit loose, a few blunders, and Fabi just hasn't found his footing as it's 3-1 with more 5+1 ahead.
Yeah, and the point is, that's good news, I think, for Fabi, even though he's trailing, that it hasn't been clinical by Magnus, right? It's been wild. It's been back and forth, both with internet connectivity issues, the kind they don't make a pill for, as well as the fact that the chess on the board has been just sporadic and odd. So let's see what happens. As we dive in here, I'm like everyone else waiting for Fabiano Caruana to get his first win in the SCC against Magnus in a long time. In fact, let's just throw out a diamond membership, maybe a poll in chat or something. 1-year diamond for whoever predicts correctly which game Fabi will get his first win. Because I'm going on record. It's happening, Amon. Whoever guesses the game gets a diamond membership. Even if we got to do multiple diamond memberships. Let's do it.
And it's what? So we're in game number 5 right now. Okay,
yeah, game 5. So predict the correct game, and we'll give you a diamond membership. That'll be fun. And hopefully, like 1,000 people don't predict it, because then Eric might be like, oh, that's a little too many diamond memberships. But hey, it's the holiday season. Let's go.
Yeah, I think anytime you're in November, you always think ahead to the holidays. So you're clearly in the spirit. I'm going to go ahead and bet the exact opposite right now. I don't think that it's going to be this game. I don't know whether that's a bold prediction or not, but usually Black needs to play Fabi in this case for a move like F6, because if you don't include F6, it looks really tough, to deal with G3, H4, H5. Imagine that knight going back to H8. I mean, that is just terrible. So looking at that, I'm feeling like F6 has to be, there we go, immediately played, and it's just necessary in order to free those pieces.
But the weakness on E6 is now the big storyline, right? The problem with F6 is it's a pawn you sometimes wish you had back, and you wish it was guarding E6. So Magnus immediately relocating the knight, maybe coming to this side of the board, but you have to keep an eye on this E6 pawn now if you're Fabi.
Yep. And it almost resembles a little bit like, that classic French structure here. And that's not an opening that you'd really expect. This did start as a Sicilian, so I just want to mention that. But we're kind of back into what you'd see more in the French. Normally, you're all pretty happy to play against this as white, but the engine is reasonably happy, reasonably satisfied with what Fabi has got here, which is a little bit to my surprise as well.
Yeah, I mean, white has a teeny bit of an edge, but you're right. It's not that bad. I still, okay, I was going to say, the problem with these positions is the only way to get rid of E6 is to play E5, and then the D pawn becomes the biggest weakness after that. But you're kind of all in, because once you start with F6 to get you the space that you talked about, then you kind of got to deal with E6, and at that point, you kind of got to deal with D5. And so Black wants to open these positions and kind of, if you had your way, you'd just take everything off the board and be equal again. But this is going to get double-edged and very sharp with the D pawn and this diagonal here.
I think there's already a pawn maybe to be taken. Like, I'm pretty sure that bishop takes G6 there, followed by pawn takes E5, was going to win the D pawn by force. It's just you would have to give up your light squared bishop in the process. So maybe, not the most desirable. I could see maybe a slower approach here where you almost want to play bishop c2, bishop b3, knight d4, like just slowly build the game up. No rush to take that d pawn. Instead, just apply the pressure. So I like it for Magnus, but maybe I think the engine was reacting to the possibility of just winning that d pawn outright there.
If we want, we can show that line. And for those wondering why the pawn was hanging, it's because if you take on g6, you also have the ability to take c8 at the end of the variation. So just to quickly show it, at the end of something like this, maybe this isn't the exact move order because you could have taken f3. The point is there's this. Okay, so what is the exact move order? Because this would have been much worse.
Yeah, I think Black is incentivized to throw in rook takes c1, whereas, white is trying to make sure they don't allow knight takes on f3. So I was thinking takes on g6, and then takes on e5, and then take on c8. But it comes at the cost of those doubled f pawns on f3. So it's like, you see that trade-off there. It's not an easy decision to make, right?
Yeah, and definitely something that I think we can understand why Magnus didn't go for it. In fact, probably would have been better for Fabi. So instead we have the long-term isolated queen pawn feature where this pawn is weak, but it's not currently being attacked or targeted in any way. So Fabi is maintaining comfy equality.
Yeah, I'll say maybe equality. I don't know about comfy. It does feel like a position I'd maybe rather play for white, but not by a lot. And mainly because the knight on e5 has two moves which kind of bother me after, let's say, bishop takes d7, queen d7, which is knight c4 and knight g4. And if I could play b3 and h3, I think I might feel a little bit better. And so I'm imagining that white wants to, put this rook on d1 or queen on d2, but you always have to watch these knight jumps because the f2 pawn can be loose and the b2 pawn can be loose. And those two come under fire with knight c4 and knight g4, not to mention here, knight d3, big consideration.
Yeah, well, the rook goes to d1 to guard knight d3. Knight c4 would not be possible because the queen could just take it, just to point out the pin. I was going to say, do you worry about the a7 pawn at some point? And I guess Fabi answers that, like, I'm going to back up the knight. That a7 pawn could have been stolen if you weren't careful, maybe.
Yep, agree. Agreed. That's the classic move that you're like, he's not going to do it. And then you allow it, and then he does it, and you're like, you're regretting everything. I've been there. The regret is never worth it.
So he goes to c6, won't regret losing that pawn. Now Magnus has to figure out how he wants to put pressure on d5. There's some different ways to do it, but the thing about an isolated pawn is, by definition, there's no other pawns around it, which it can push and advance, sometimes aggressively. So if Magnus loosens his control over the d4 square, Bobby might just push the pawn, and then it's extra guarded.
Yep, queen to c5, hits the d pawn, does come at the expense of dropping the b pawn, and so I guess the standard, or definitely the simplest move, is just to occupy the square in front of the isolated pawn. A tale as old as time. This is how you're always taught to play against it. If everything exchanges on d4, we're going to see the white queen back up the rook with queen d2 and just full pressure on the d5 pawn. Now, you're not winning the pawn because black can always defend with rook d8. You're never really going to win this pawn, but you can tie the pieces down so that it's always up to you when you want to relinquish that pressure and place it elsewhere, with the hope, I guess, that you can do that and maneuver more effectively than your opponent from side to side.
Yeah. Well said. We may end up getting exactly that type of major piece endgame. Okay, not quite yet. Bobby plays rook e8. I expect Magnus to deal with his back rank at some point here. You don't want tactics like that to hang in the air for too long.
I agree. Yeah, would have even thought about it right there. H3, for example, but queen e2 definitely with a similar idea. H3, bishop back to c3.
Yeah, now I think Bobby, he doesn't go for it. I was going to say, at some point, you have to decide if you want that major piece endgame, because the bishop, I think, is better than the knight if you're in a spot where you can target things on both sides of the board. So at the same time, what Fabi's saying is, if you move this bishop, I'm going to push this pawn, and it might be isolated, but it is passed. And here we go. We're going to see exactly that type of line.
Yeah, so f3, rook e6, or rook e5, I suppose. Maybe rook e5, so you can play rook d5.
I like that.
I'm assuming is going to be played at rook takes e3, a similar tactic that you mentioned earlier, where you can just take the rook on e3 because of the loose queen on d7. And definitely an achievement to get that pawn from d5 to d4. You have to be very happy as Fabi. Magnus is not, I wouldn't say he's concerned, but he's got, 37 seconds, and he knows that's an achievement for Fabi here.
d3, interesting move. I was going to say that I'm surprised Fabi didn't go for what you said. I think the rook just felt better on a light square on d5. Now the rook actually can't go to d6. So we'll see what happens here with the d3 pawn being targeted. Now that you play king f1, you will take this pawn the next move.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing, this rook e6, because it feels good to put the rook on a light square. So rook e6 makes sense because it's a light square. But the destination was actually the d file. And so you wanted to go on a dark square initially to end up on a light square permanently.
Yeah, there you go. The tale as old as time. You got to go off the road to get back on the other road. I don't even know if that's a tale, but all right. Bishop to g3 played. It's going to come to f2. And I'm liking Magnus's chances more and more. Although note that Fabi is up on time for the first time in time pressure that I think we've seen.
Yeah, it's actually really relinquished, though, because he had a minute and a half. Now it's evening up. We might see queen to c3 as opposed to queen takes d3, just as a method of maybe trying to protect and conserve the b pawn and knowing that you'll win the other pawn eventually.
Rook e2 kind of forces the issue. You're going to get queen takes d3, and at the end, black picks up the b2 pawn. That's exactly what we're seeing. It's funny. The black pieces are to be preferred because you will have a queenside pass pawn, but the bishop is to be preferred over the knight, any type of endgame where you've got pressure maybe on both sides of the board. So this is super balanced, and I still think anyone's game in time pressure.
Yeah, if that knight moves, there's either rook takes g7 or just bishop e5, and there's going to be problems.
Yeah, nice tactic. Nice spot there. The knight moves, you've got big time issues on e5. The bishop is immediately threatening to go to c3. Fabi says no.
Also hitting the a pawn, like rook d5, becomes more of a consideration. And I would say that a pawn is maybe less of a concern compared to the g pawn. Like, I do think you station the rook on maybe a7, and I think there's much more to play for Magnus. Not a lot, but I prefer it.
Yep. No, agreed. And this was kind of what we predicted. When the bishop and rook get together against targets on both sides of the board, good things happen. And so Magnus will be the one who's up a pawn. Will it be enough, right? The knight is typically a good defensive piece once you can get things to just one area of the board. Yeah, Magnus leaned in a little frustrated there with his own kind of choice.
Yeah, I think he could have preserved the pawns. Like, you could have played h4, g3 and just kind of got them to a safe square first. He hasn't done it in the best way, and as a result, I guess it's a bit more drawish, because if you're going to take, I was going to say, if you're going to take this pawn, you have to trade rooks, but he actually found a way to keep the rook on the board, so credit to Magnus.
He did, and now both sides are literally living off the increment, so nice to see, knock on wood, that right now, no further internet issues for Fabi, and I did knock on wood, so don't blame me for a commentator's curse. Seems to be good, doesn't seem to be having any issues, but will he defend? Will the knight be able to hold?
Yeah, this looks like a position that's quite comfortable. Ooh, knight d5. I guess you go into the rook endgame now, and that's a little bit easier.
Should be easier to hold, although I would not put it past Magnus to swindle one. He squeezes water out of stones for a living. He's been doing it for years. We'll see if he can. Eval bar.
G5. You're supposed to play rook to the 5th rank there in order to prevent this move, or maybe rook f4, but he just allows g5, and this is exactly that.
No, it was rook f7. Yeah, Magnus missed rook f7. That was the win. Now we're back to a draw.
Oh my goodness, what is going on in this one? It just shows you how tough these endgames are.
Yeah, seriously. It's really hard to even explain what
He's
move
got to abandon these, right?
Honestly.
Oh, the repetition. Oh no. That is going... I don't think he intended to repeat. I was thinking that at the very, very end, he might have considered running to e4 and d3, like going away and saying, okay, let me like try to find another way to win this. So I think he was really unhappy with the repetition. Fabi escaped with one in that one. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, he got away with one. He still hasn't gotten his first win, so whoever's predicting it to get that diamond membership I offered, I guess we're back to the drawing board. You were right, by the way. The idea of the king running away from the f-pawn was the winning plan for Magnus, but that was really tricky, and it shows you how tough those endgames are. We have the luxury of the engine and the eval bar, but that is just, it's so weird to see a single subtle thing change the evaluation altogether, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe the good thing for the players, Danny, is they don't know that. It would be much more annoying if I knew that I was oscillated between a draw and a win for about 10 moves there at the end of the game. Instead, maybe Magnus is slightly annoyed with the repetition, and that's about it, and they can just focus on the next game.
Yeah. All right, well, the next game is here. Fabiano looking for his first win of the match, his first win in a long time against Magnus in terms of the Speed Championship. So I'm liking his chances here again. I like the opening again better than maybe some he's had before. Although that back rank is worrying me. Tactics are already happening.
Very, very concerning. The move b4 is, and based on the time, I'm wondering how much that is prep and how much it's just, hey, this looks annoying. Because for me, it's the second, it's the latter. This looks annoying. The knight on b1 cannot move to a3. You can't move to d2. The bishop can't really move from d2 because you have to guard queen e1 mate. So, yeah, to me, b4 is just one of those moves that's super annoying.
Although a3 is a nice response there. What a funny way to deal with that problem. You invite the capture, which of course would allow the knight to get out. And if you take here, I expect the knight would probably also just take back. And so if you do nothing, I will trade. We will get another set of rooks off the board, and my back rank problems are also less concerning with every piece that is coming off. So nice move by Fabi. I like a3.
Yeah, I wonder how much a4 is being considered here. It looks like a4, bishop takes d5, just wins a clear pawn on b4. But, okay, gives up a lot of light squares as well. So that could be like some weird practical decision. And, if the bishop moves, then maybe b3 and you keep it locked up. So that's something I like about this a4 move.
Yeah, and Magnus agrees with you. He thinks it's a worthy pawn sack, although I see people in chat rooting for that diamond membership. They predicted maybe, although I don't think it is fair for everyone to get one if everyone just keeps predicting the next game. So I'm going to have to think about my own contest I just invented, because I don't know how that's going to work. We might just have to give it to the first person who got it right after all. We'll see.
Yeah, there's There's no.
There's a reason smarter people than me come up with the contest that we do, and they don't give me the microphone that often. So
there you go. H5. So queen takes H5. Queen E4. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Looking for a prompt that works consistently? Often handcrafted prompts will work once and have to be rewritten each time. Meta prompt built by HubSpot CTO Dharmesh Shah will create precise prompts that work consistently. Enter any existing prompt, answer a couple of questions, and you've got a perfectly optimized prompt.
Stuck? Nano Banana plus Hailuo AI equals your flawless workflow solution. First, let's create our perfect final shot. Open Nano Banana. We'll upload our product images as a reference. Then, we just describe the scene we want. And just like that, we have our epic end frame. Okay, let's create this transition in seconds. Open Hailuo AI and go straight to the video tool. For the start frame, we'll use this beautiful close-up of the flower. And for the end frame, we'll use the picture we just created with Nano Banana. Now, we just tell Hailuo AI how to connect them. And boom, a high-end commercial made from 2 simple images. Simple, right? All the prompts I used are ready for you. Check the link below and elevate your brand storytelling.
He's going to go for it and allow this tricky stuff with queen e4.
Yeah, but you're still running into like, you know, queen d1, queen e4, f3, queen d3, and you just feel like none of your pieces are where they should be for white. So this is why I thought it was a decent practical attempt, and it's a blitz game. After all, Magnus really understands that. I think with his decisions, you can also just toss that h-pawn up the board further, h4, h3. I just think that the engine is obviously liking white here with the material, but clearly, Danny, there's a lot of compensation that Fabi, with a minute and a half think there, just tried to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, and he did. He took a minute and a half, as you said, went down big time on the clock. Magnus probably goes for this queen e4 idea anyway, or your move h4. Feels like queen e4 first. If you can induce f3, that's a move that white might want back down the road. So I'm still liking queen e4. Magnus is really slowing down before he does it. What else could he be considering? The other idea, instead of the queen in front, is the queen behind. And you put the queen on c6 and make a battery against the light squares, which is also something you might be thinking about. If queen c6, f3, you still have h4 and h3 as a means to kind of undermine the pawn chain.
Yep. There's also rook a6 to e6. Like, same idea we've seen in a couple of games so far. And maybe you kind of lead in with the rook first and use, in conjunction with maybe h4, h3. So I can understand pausing here because there's a lot of different ways to do this. You can go queen in front, queen behind. You can go rook in front, rook behind. And you could just push this h-pawn as well.
Yeah. Okay, fair. Yeah, a lot to consider. The other advantage, of course, of keeping the queen on c6 is that you keep guarding the a-pawn if you're worried about that. That's the other thing Fabi might be considering if the variation is right. So a fun
you don't
position.
Have to worry. You don't have to worry about knight a3 because, you kind of do get developed there. But I could see positions where Magnus just says, "Okay, play knight a3, you get developed," but you're just on the wrong side of the board. The knight takes a while to get back in, and he does start with h4. Obviously, h3 had to be the reaction. I think there's absolutely no way you could have allowed black to play h3. And now, what did he want this for? Is it that queen e4, f3, maybe the dark squares are a bit weaker?
Yep. Or does he want queen to c6 again, similarly with the same kind of forced response? But I'm liking your rook a6 idea more and more. Okay, he does go for queen c6. I think the rook having a long-term future. Keep an eye here because f3 is forced. g2 is a permanent weakness because of this h-pawn anchoring it. So I'm going to use the word alpha zero, Amon. This feels like the kind of game you could see from the way the long-term pawn sacrifices were being played in some of those epic games that we saw for the first time by Alpha Zero against Stockfish long ago. It really does feel that way. This is such a fascinating way for Magnus to play the position down a pawn, but with just long-term pressure all over the board.
Yeah, I know that this is in white's favor, and I'll be the first to hand Fabi a lot of credit for surviving this, but it looks like a tough task to play the top moves every single move here. Good luck to him. Rook e8, I'm only assuming here.
And it's funny because here we are as commentators just openly disagreeing with the evaluation bar, but I feel right about that. I think, remember, the eval is often only as good as the computer analyzing it. You have local web browser stuff, you have deep engine analysis, and I'm not saying with perfect play white isn't better. And by the way, this was a very good move by Fabi. I think knight to d2 coming next is key, but I just love black's compensation here, and I think this pressure is going to be tough. Although, look at the clock. He's getting himself in time pressure, speaking of pressure.
This is how you do it. Maybe you don't find every single best move, but you find every single best move up to a point, and then hopefully by that point, Magnus has invested so much time that it becomes more manageable after that. Queen e6 there, hitting the bishop, knight d2, happy to give it up and win the bishop on c4. So I think that was the right idea. And this move right here, if rook takes, I think he's trying to switch over and say queen to e6. You don't have rook e1 anymore. And meanwhile, pawn takes, of course, queen takes c3.
Yeah, I love this idea. I'm not sure if it wins material. The queen goes to e6. The bishop moves to f4. I think that's the only move because you can't really guard it with the knight. What is next for black there is the question. But Magnus is all in on whatever compensation he has to generate. The first pawn sacrifice was more than 10 moves ago, and now he's sacrificing another one.
I wonder if the idea is queen e6, bishop f4, like queen f5, and then he's trying to play rook e2. And then for white, you might have to react to that with bishop e5, like just something where you kind of offer a pawn almost to stop the rook e2 idea. We're about to see some variations on the board. Let's see.
You called that exact variation. White has to play bishop e5. You really cannot afford to allow rook e2. So
and you could have rook a5 as well, like bishop e5, rook a5. You continue to throw moves in, but yeah, I thought initially pawn takes was the simplest.
Okay, Fabi is up a pawn, but black's pressure is still here. Oh, wait, is black up? White's up two pawns.
Yeah, up two feels like maybe one, but I think Fabi deserves a lot of credit for what he's done with this game here. Takes, followed by knight e4. Yeah, it's not quite good enough, but maybe knight f1.
Knight f1, very nice.
Yeah.
Get rid of the g-pawn. Only Fabiano can win this position. Will he get his first dub against Magnus Carlsen in the Speed Chess Championship? He does! Oh my god! As I said it, Magnus just throws in the towel, and we have a winner. All right, team, I need you to find the first person who predicted this game, even though it feels like cheating. We're going to give that person a 1-year Diamond membership because I'm feeling generous. Forget these 1-month Diamond memberships. 1 year.
Wow.
In celebration of Fabiano Caruana getting his first win against Magnus in a very long time in the SCC.
Yeah, look, it did happen by time there, but that's the one moment where, even though it ended by a flag, I'll be the first to say, like, I don't think you need to feel bad at all. First of all, Fabi's had his own issues with flagging in this match, but I'll also say that was an incredible series of moves, only moves. Like, that was extremely accurate and high-level chess because Magnus, I think he objectively played a phenomenal kind of sacrifice, practical play, and Fabi just navigated it, almost engine-like. Like, he had to play those best moves to emerge on top, and he did. So he definitely earned and deserved that full point.
Yeah. And apologies, I didn't even realize it was a flag. I thought Magnus had thrown in the towel, but the evaluation was high enough. White was up 2 pawns. Only Fabiano could win, so he should not feel bad at all. Flag or resign. He gets his first victory against Magnus in a long time. And hey, we have a match here. Despite how awkward this day has been, Amon, and despite how tough of a start it was for Fabi, he's down 1 game right now. And who knows, maybe he levels it up before we go to the break.
Yeah, exactly right. Look at that match clock, top left of your screen, 5+1 ticking down. Extremely likely, almost guaranteed that this will be the final game, which means you're absolutely right. We could be at 3.5. And I think regardless, Fabi, even if he draws here, I mean, I think he's doing quite well, not just in the match in general, but considering how he's gotten here, the circumstances thus far. That was a really nice game for him to bounce back and kind of typical Fabiano style. Like, he challenges himself puts himself in a position that is risky, but if he finds those best moves and he trusts himself too, then look what happens.
Yeah. No, he's willing to take on those types of positions, highly accurate as a chess player, and also kind of likes those technical games where he has to find the best move. I think he thrives in a lot of those positions with accurate calculation being required, whether pushing or defending. And so that was good stuff. And here we go with, all right, still just a very very equal looking game. Funny Italian that we had here. Now here Magnus is just going to go for f4 and try to use the f file, but watch c2 first.